Chairman. Yeah, I have a first cousin whose mother and our whole family is glad that she carried him and has taken care of him. And anyway, it raises difficult issues. And having had a preemie for our first child, we weren't sure what we were getting. We felt like apparently it was going to be a girl, but she came so early. This was a very difficult time in our lives. And Ms. Inc., you have my great sympathy. But having had a child who was premature and having sat there, we had an incredible neonatologist in Shreveport, Dr. Singh, T-S-I-N-G, and I haven't seen him since then. But he had such a love for the children. And when we were told we could go either to Dallas or Shreveport, I asked about the survivability, and he said, we seem to have more children live in Shreveport for whatever reason. I said, my wife and I had talked about, well, let's go to Shreveport, anything we can do for our child, because they were losing her. And as you know, among preemies, blindness can be an issue if you're exposed to 100% oxygen or too much oxygen too quickly because of the blood vessels that dilated cause the separation, or the little fingers that come out that separate it from the retina. And I knew when they went from 20 to 40 to 60 to 80% oxygen very quickly that they knew our baby was in big trouble. But Dr. Singh said it is so important that the baby hear your voice. Please talk to your baby. Here's a stool beside the isolette. And caress her, talk to her. Her eyes don't work very well. She won't recognize you, but she will know your voice because she's heard you in utero. And you know, as you would know, the lungs are about the last to develop. They have trouble breathing. Breathing is so shallow and so rapid, and the heart rate so erratic. But I would, as my wife had said, go do anything you can for our baby. They said you can sit for 2 hours, and so I sat. And he said, caress her, talk to her, and as I did, the little bitty fingers grasp around the end of my finger. And I sat there for an hour or so. Dr. Singh came by and said, have you noticed the monitors? Breathing still very shallow, heartbeat fast, but they had stabilized and not become so erratic. And Dr. Singh says, she's drawing strength, she's drawing life from you. Well, with that, I couldn't leave, and after 8 hours, they told me I had to take a break. I couldn't keep sitting there, but I'm helping my child. How could I leave? But when I read and hear of your account, Doctor, of how a child like mine would have the sulfur clamp placed on a leg and then ripped from the body, grabbing an arm and ripped from the body. And I think about our little Katie hanging on to my finger for dear life. It's pretty difficult as well. Being there in a advanced neonatal ICU, I did see there was one child that was born that was missing parts, including a spine. And the parents ended up, when it was very clear there was no brain activity whatsoever, there was nothing, there were decisions that they had to make at that point. Ms. Sink, having my great sympathy and empathy both, I still come back wondering, shouldn't we wait like that couple did and see if the child can survive before we decide to rip them apart? So these are ethical issues, they're moral issues, they're difficult issues, and the parents should certainly be consulted. But it just seems like it's a more educated decision if the child is in front of you to make those decisions. So I appreciate all that each of you bring. Ms. Stanig, I have known and loved you before I ever saw your picture, and I just read the account of what I knew you endured. But thank each of you for being here. Thank you for the input that each of you bring to this difficult issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.